You obviously very recently left your role as executive manager at Chelsea Women after being with the club for 11 years. First of all, got to ask the obvious question. Why'd you leave?
Do you know what? It wasn't necessarily about the reasons for leaving. It was more about what the opportunity was going forward. I think, if I look at Chelsea, I honestly, I think I had the most unbelievable time and the most incredible experiences, and absolutely loved every single second of it. Even the bits when once a season we had silly results. I loved every part of it was amazing, and but sometimes it's time. It's time, and sometimes personally, I need a change of direction and change. If 11 years is a long, long time, to be in any job, but to be 11 years in football is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
Can you pick a biggest highlight of those 11 years?
Do you know what? I think it's really normal when you leave something, which is, it's basically been, if we move it to 12 years, it's been 25% of my life. So picking out one, there are so many little moments that you keep sort of flashing back to. So I think what was amazing about Chelsea was the journey and how the journey kept going. And there were so many different steps on the journey. So, that first win, I think for example, when we lost to City on the last game of the season in 2014 or 15,
was it?
that was horrific. And yet, it inspired us to just push, and to go so massively in one direction and turn the girls professional. And, there was that much fated meeting of that, we all went to Rosso, which was Rio Ferdinand's restaurant after we lost the league. And literally we were sat on a table and it was just sort of like, this ain't happening again. We're not doing this again. And then, fast forward however many months later, 12 months later, and, the win against Notts County at Wembley, the signing Frank Kirby was massive, just so many different things. And then winning the league against Sunderland when we won 4-0 and France scored amazing goals. And, it's just the whole buzz around the place. And then you keep going, and then, you start off in Europe and you have like sort of the first game against Glasgow City, and you're like, oh great, this is what Europe's about. We go to Glasgow, win there, and then we play Wolfsburg and we get literally hammered by Wolfsburg. And look, you've been to Wolfsburg even more times than me.
Oh, don't.
No. Well, I'm thinking now I don't ever have to go there again. So there are perks to all of this. And just that colour green more than anything else. It's so we then it's just the growing and growing and growing. So I think there are so many amazing times in Europe. There was Maroune's last minute goal at PSG, which was incredible. There was when we beat Bayern. I think we lost the game in Bayern, but we held on. And all I can remember is at the end of the game, or for the last 5 minutes, myself, Carly, Claire Raff, and a couple of the backroom staff were literally in the tunnel watching the game through this ridiculous thing. And then when the whistle blew, we all just ran on the pitch going mental. And the groundsman, as they did, was like, to me, it was like, no, you can't go on. You're wearing shoes. I'm like, seriously, come on. And then beating Bayern at home when we got to the Champions League final in front of about 20 people, even though it was like in front of 20 people, when Pernilla scored that goal, that was just incredible. There's just so many. It's so many. You always think about the trophies, and we've been amazing. I've been amazingly fortunate that they've been plentiful.
I guess sometimes it's not the obvious things that are the memories when you're so involved in a journey. It's those kind of, like some of those moments you've touched on, whether it's a goal or whatever that might be. They're the kind of little bits that stand out for you. But I'm sure along the journey that you've been on as a squad, there were some challenges. What were some of those? I'd say, I imagine at the beginning especially.
I think we've been. I don't want to use the word fortunate, but I think we've been really strategic. I think that's probably the main difference between ourselves, Arsenal, City. I'll group us three together, and then compared to the rest. So, a lot of the political stuff that happens in women's football has been massively, massively challenging. And, you're dealing with, and Nikki's finding this now, you're dealing with so many different stakeholders and so many people who want different things from it. And I think if I was to highlight one problem, and yeah, again, as I said, we've been amazingly, I think what we've done, and, Emma was obviously a huge part of this, but so was Paul, so was, everyone. We got the buy-in from Chelsea Football Club. We got the buy-in really early. We got people who didn't hold, who saw women's football as an amazing thing and wanted to be successful and wanted to be really successful. And not, we want to be successful, but it was like, we want to win. And really, that was it. And as I said, going back to one of the, I'd say probably the major issue is with women's football, people hold women's football to different standards to anything else. Completely different standards. There are so many conversations and so many points where people say, but they need to do this. We need to do this. Why? Why do you need to, the financial sustainability, for example, part of it. You don't hold men's football to the same standards. So why are you doing it to women's football? You don't have people who are saying, we'll only invest on these because of this. Why? And as I said, Chelsea, I've been very, very fortunate to work for a club who holds the women's club to the same standards as it holds the men's club.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I think women's football is expected to produce before people are willing to invest. And it's the clubs that are willing to invest before it's expected to produce that tend to do better. And I think, we're seeing that conversation now. Obviously, we're going to touch on some of the marquee signings you made as a club, but that willingness to invest is sometimes held as a rod to beat Chelsea with, buying your way to the league, or, other clubs can't keep up. What would you say to that kind of idea that other clubs can't afford to keep up, or, Chelsea have kind of bought their way to success?
Basically, what we are talking, the money that we're talking about in what Chelsea have spent, or what Man City have spent, or what Arsenal have spent, any other Premier League club could spend the same amount of money. That's all I'm going to say on that. Any of them could do it, no problem. They choose not to.
Yeah, I think, understandably, I think as the game grows, we look at ways of making it sustainable, etc., and not going down the route of the men's game. But I also think, as you say, as you touched on, it's in comparison such small amounts, so it's that balance, isn't it? You need more clubs to be stepping up. And I guess it's around the wider federation of where the investment goes, etc.
Yeah. And I think, the reality is the amount of money that's in women's football, and obviously this will go on to the Sevens chat, but I think the amount of, money internally in women's football isn't huge. And as I said, there is no reason why, I won't mention any of the clubs, but seriously, any other Premier League club could get to where Chelsea was, and, or where Chelsea is. And I think also, we talk about Chelsea, We didn't do it in 1 minute. We did it literally. I could probably chart the growth and growth and growth, and where we've gone up a notch there, we've gone up a notch there, we've gone up a notch there. And to be honest with you, I think ourselves, City and Arsenal, have pushed each other, which has been amazing. To be honest, I think we've been very happy bedfellows on that sort. Maybe not on the pitch all the time, but I think we all recognise we all have a part to play in the growth of women's football. And also, we're talking about a worldwide game. We're not talking. You can't be just insular and think, well, we're talking. When the WPLL took over, one of the things was to develop the most exciting league in the world. Okay, so how are we going to do that? What does that actually mean? Does that mean we actually restrict how much people, you want us to be big, but you only want us to be so big, you want us it to be controllable. And as I said, so I think that's one of the things that is really challenging, let's say, in women's football.
Yeah, you touch on kind of being able to chart the growth over time. And sometimes when you think of some of the marquee signings in the league, that's another way of charting the growth and investment in Chelsea. I think back to when Fran Kirby was signed from Reading and what a big signing that was. Ji So-yeon, Pernilla Harder, Myra Ramirez, then of course Naomi Girma. And they're almost like ways of charting how invested Chelsea was, I guess, in their women's side. So give us an insight into some of those decision-making processes, because they're big signings. Each one of those within that kind of time, their own time period, were huge signings.
So honestly, I think, I think probably the first really, really most important signing that we made, or two, sorry, it's always two, are Katie Chapman and Julie Flaherty, because they changed it. The pair of them, and Julie often goes under the radar because Katie was obviously captain, but the pair of them had such a winning mentality. And, they were playing for Arsenal, and suddenly it's like, okay. So I think Katie and Jill, we always, it's not always the most obvious players as well who make the difference. So someone like, we'd had European or international players before, and then Hedvig Lindahl came in, and Viggy literally standards. Someone like Magda, Marin, it's all about the standards, and that Scandi influence was major. But then Fran was massive. Fran was absolutely huge, and we sold Fran the dream. And fortunately for us, the dream came true. But there was nothing to sort of like, it was trust us. This is what's going to happen. G was another one who, G is up there with anyone that's ever played for Chelsea. G, yet again, just the standards. And it's all about the standards. It's, there was a sign, this isn't confidential at all if anyone's seen the documentary. There's, the sign there that what got us here won't get us there. So it's always about improving everything on the pitch, off the pitch. And that, it's very simple. It's, it's a very, very, if you want to improve your team, buy better players, but also, it's not that simple. Make sure the character is right as well. I think the character is hugely important.
I guess that's something we'll touch on Emma as well, obviously having worked there for so long, but I know something she often says is, if it ain't broke, break it. And, I imagine she was a huge part in driving those standards, not just on the pitch, but off it as well. What was it like working with her? I guess you went on that journey together.
I sort of laugh now a bit when we talk about Emma. Emma's just Emma. I don't know. When you're used to someone, I think I now, looking back, it's very much Emma and Paul. Emma, the very outwardly one. Emma, amazing, incredible, and a lot of the stuff that Emma did, is completely untrainable, completely. You think it's off the cuff. It isn't. She is so damn smart, ridiculously damn smart, and everything is not 99% of stuff is strategic. So even when, let's say, she did something and the press sort of, especially towards the end, got on her back, I knew exactly what she was doing,
Me
exactly
too.
what she was doing, and it was genius. And it was sort of like, basically, it was one of those where you'd watch it, literally just throw something out there, and it, like that popcorn moment. It was like, oh god, they're falling for it again. Um, and I mean, she's great. She's amazing, Emma. She's an absolute genius, and coupled with Paul, um, you know, at the time, Paul is amazing, and Paul is very much, I suppose, the water to her fire. Um, and then you have, but then, the staff as well, and this year, obviously, it's changed a lot, but, traditionally people like Stu Searle, who, I think there was one World Cup where he trained 3 of the 4 goalkeepers in the semi-finals or something. That doesn't happen out of luck, but these people have been on the journey as well. And Denise and, all these people have just learned and improved amazingly. And just to have that incredible team. And I think more than anything, we're looking at women's football and none of them see it as a stepping stone. You see a lot of people in the women's game, a lot of coaches who see it as a stepping stone. I don't think they do at all. Or they've shown that that's not the case. And they're true experts in their field.
Yeah, and I think you touch on the backroom staff and Paul, and, when you're looking at building the squad, it's like everyone's on the same page. So everyone can do their job 100% because they know everybody else is doing their job focus 100%. So, when you think about going out for those high profile players, and Emma used to speak a lot about the type of player that worked with Chelsea, not just their abilities on the pitch, but what they were like as a character. So it does seem like you were all so across this kind of machine that was running and knew exactly what little piece or what piece of the jigsaw would kind of put it all together. And I guess you could almost say you had to go out and then look for the piece that was going to replace Emma, right? And it seems you've done a good job with Sonia, I think.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's going amazing. And I think, the first thing to say is that Sonia and Cami are great people. They're people, look, their records speak for themselves off on the pitch and off the pitch, but they're just really, really good people, and they're winners. And it's that mentality as well. It's that, again, the improvement. And, people think there's some sort of secret sauce. I don't think there is. Maybe I'm downplaying it, but I genuinely don't think there is. I think it's just amazing people in every sort of department.
I think it must be that everyone is on the same page in terms of what they see the project as, where they see the project going. And maybe we underestimate the importance of everyone in the backroom side of things who are working on all the different areas, whether that's the training facilities, whoever's going out looking for new players, whoever holds the purse strings. They all need to be on the same wavelength as the team almost. And I think maybe we don't put enough value on that. And that is what leads you to success, right? Because you can have players and people in and around the team that are like, no, we want to be winners. We want to get to the Champions League. We want to win trophies. But if that's not filtered all the way through, that's potentially where you fall down.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right. And I think when we were at an awards dinner last year, and Chloe came up to me and said, God, Chelsea winning again, it's so boring. And I just went, do you know what? Actually, losing is really boring. Winning is great. But losing, honestly, tell me anyone who doesn't enjoy winning, because that is where you get the enjoyment of football. You can, you can play amazingly and lose 3-2. You walk off and you're just like, I didn't enjoy that. Unless you're sort of like, your mentality is different from mine, I suppose. But if you lose a game, you very, very rarely, regardless of how well you played or how well the team played, you very rarely enjoy it. If you win, there's nothing better than a really undeserved 1-0 victory. I love those. I absolutely love those, where you come off, they've played absolutely awfully, and they win 1-0. And you're just like, yeah, I like that.
It's also when people don't interrogate the results, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because 3 points is 3 points.
No, exactly. You don't get extra points for playing in a certain way. You get points for winning. And, that's the enjoyment factor, I think, anyway.
Well, then how hard was it to say goodbye to Chelsea after years of winning?
Yeah, it's always hard. But, I think if I wasn't sad, about leaving, then I should have left years ago, if that makes sense. But basically, I'm more sort of like be happy for what's happened as opposed to sad that you're leaving. So yeah, I was sad, but it was time. It was time, and honestly, it was outweighed by how excited I am about, I suppose, the new project.
Natural next question, new journey. You've joined World Sevens Football as head of football. Yep. World Sevens Football is the new global women's seven-a-side tournament, which is set to launch ahead of the Champions League final in May, and it will also be held in Portugal. I mean, how did the opportunity come about? What made it the right move for you?
Do you know what? So I've known the owners, the investors, for quite a while. I've known, for a few years. I've known all the other guys, a lot of the other guys who are involved, and I was just really excited. We talked about it. It was just something that, I think for me, my background, I like startups. Honestly, I like moving the needle. And I think with women's football, there's so much opportunity to move the needle and do different things and try different things and impact in different ways. And it was full of very like-minded people. And it was, I'll put it this, there's no internal buy-in for what we want to do and what, the pedestal or whatever they place women's football on. No one in the organisation's like, oh, it's women's football. Should we do this? Should we do that? It's literally like, we're going to smash it. And, but it's very player centric. It's not ego driven. It's really just, there's an opportunity to do something here. And someone said to me, and whoever it was, they said this amazing thing, which was, the thing is with women's football, what we should do is look at men's football, and instead of copying what men's football do, actually see what they can't do and do that. Love that.
Love that.
So whoever that was, thank you, because I'm stealing that and telling everyone
that. Maybe they'll tweet us and tell us. Yeah. I know you haven't necessarily started yet, but what does your role involve? Are you kind of going out and pitching it to clubs and getting them interested? Are you tapping up people to sponsor? What does your role entail?
Yeah, so I have started. Yeah, that's number one. So it's vast and varied. It's, first of all, head of football. So making sure that what we are doing is right for the players, right for the clubs, right for the game of football. So basically breaking it, but not smashing it around the head and going, woohoo, let's have clowns coming on and putting this goal on the centre circle or stuff like that. Just making sure that actually what we have is a proper tournament with proper clubs and proper players, and actually elevates women's football as opposed to it's just another tournament. It's, there's a big amount of prize money. As I said, making sure that, I suppose, everything is aligned and that people want to come. People, with the, as I said, we've got an amazing team of people working on it. But mine is the football side of things.
And why seven-a-side? What's the vision?
So the vision is that seven-a-side, shorter, sharper, quicker. Quite frankly, people want goals, people want action, people want, it gives people a different skill set. It's obviously, a lot of the girls do it in training. I think it provides different stars as well. 11-a-side is amazing, and obviously that's where my true heart is. But if you're going to do something different, do it different. And I think we can get, if I look at my daughters, for example, to try and get them to watch a 90-minute game of football is nigh on impossible. To get them to watch something, where there are goals and there are different skills involved, I think is a lot easier, let's say.
And you touched on it there, the commitment to invest $100 million into the series over the 5-year period. Each competition will feature a $5 million prize pot. How significant do you think this kind of money could be in terms of investment in the women's game?
Look, I think it's absolutely huge, obviously. I mean, and I think what's really interesting about it is, I've heard a lot of feedback from people saying it's the rich getting richer. You had a bit of a knowing glance there, Rach.
Well, we said it on the pod last week, as in one of the, is it? When you don't know what it is it, could it be? And I guess when you're thinking about because we don't know exactly yet who's going to be involved. Yeah. So I mean, that was one of the pros and cons as we weighed up the league. Yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, the way that I would counter that is there's no such thing as a rich club in women's football. You could say Chelsea is a rich club. It's not. It just depends on, and actually, speaking to various people, we want investment in women's football. We want external investment into women's football because that will help women's football as a whole grow. What we're doing, we're hoping, is additive. It's not conflicting. It's not competing against anyone, anything. We want to grow the women's football ecosystem. So we bring in these, the tournament prize money. And look, the clubs will be announced in good time. What we are looking to, and they will change competition by competition. It won't be the same 8 teams in every competition. That's number one. It will be different teams. It will, and also I think what's really good about it is we see, the players and staff are also going to be have part of the prize money. So it's not just the teams, the clubs who are going to do it, but just generally for women's football, you've seen what the prize money is for winning the league. You've seen what the prize money is for the Champions League. You've seen, general prize money isn't huge, but similarly, I think we find ourselves in this system whereby everyone wants the league to give the clubs more money. Everyone wants UEFA to give the clubs more money. Everyone wants FIFA to give women's football more money. Well, here's something that is giving women's football more money without really asking for a great deal, but just to grow the game and to put that money into the ecosystem. So, if you can find me one, my guess is you could probably count the number of, in maybe 1-2 hands, the amount of clubs who will actually bring $2.5 million into their own club through commercial activity, let's say, each year.
And the other question I guess I want to ask is why now? Why May? Because, people have talked about calendar congestion and, Euros coming up, etc. So why May? Because I know you're looking at doing it, is it twice a year in different locations?
So the plan for 2025 is to have this one in May. Well, the plan that's happening, and then one later on in the year probably in North America. So as regards why this time, basically it's actually, despite what everyone's saying, is actually the perfect time to do it. So there is, first of all, there is no fixture congestion. As in that, no one is going to have a game on the Wednesday or game on the Tuesday and then come and play on the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So that's number one, that there's, we're not telling people to choose between us and something else. So, if you're in the Champions League final, exclusive, you're not playing. That's not how it works. Similarly, it's during a club window. It's not during a FIFA window or UEFA window. So yet again, that's that. Also, the other thing regarding loading, for example, is we've been doing this for I've been in discussions for, it seems like every summer I've had these discussions regarding international call-ups. And actually, I think Serena touched on it last week, that when not the worst thing, but it's really not great for a player to stop playing and then go back into international camp 2 weeks later, having not played for 2 weeks, and then go to international camp for 10 days, and then 3 weeks later, go back to, then it's tournament. There's actually something that's quite beneficial about, they're still at their clubs. So they can basically do the training they need, etc., etc. And also what's really important is the length of games. We're not talking here about playing, say a team goes through and wins this, they're going to be playing a maximum of 5 games over 3 days. So 30 minutes games, my maths tells me that's 150 minutes. So 150 minutes on basically a half-size pitch. Then the reality is that it's going to be roll-on, roll-off subs. The clubs will probably, the clubs aren't going to be bringing 14 players. They'll be bringing more than 14 players. So I would be absolutely amazed if one player or one outfield player, let's say, played more than 90 minutes over 3 days. So in that sort of thing, they would play more than 90 minutes football over 3 days in training.
Okay, that's very well laid out. So it's good to get a bit of an insight. When are the clubs going to know? When are we going to know what clubs? Is it kind of based on potential Champions League final, etc., or are you already having those conversations with clubs already?
Yeah, so we're already we've already had lots and lots of conversations. We will announce in due course. We're hoping to do it as soon as possible.
Okay, I was trying to get something out of you there.
I know, but a lot of it is. It's been really, really interesting. I'll put it that way. Really interesting, and I don't think people will be. I think people will be very pleased with who's playing.
Okay, and I guess one of the last couple of questions I want to touch on is opportunity in terms of potential new fans, potential new broadcast, potential new investment. Talk to me about the potential of this tournament.
Look, I think it's huge. First of all, not to generalize, but people don't have time anymore. And this is, it's quicker, sharper. It's cool. Also, I think the experience that we're going to put on is going to be incredible. It's going to be entertainment based, but with that competitive edge. And I think it's just really exciting. And there are so many. I think in women's football in general, if we keep doing the same things, and if we keep copying the same things, and if we keep, just following the same format, we're going to get the same results. And it's, sometimes, back to the Emma things, if it's not broken, break it. I'm not saying we're breaking it, but we're offering something different. As I said, we're not in competition with anything. We want the women's football to grow. So give people different chances and different opportunities and different ways of looking at things. We don't have to look at everything in the same way. And, for some, it might not be their thing. That's fine. But for others, this might be their thing. And hopefully we can grow and we can develop new audiences, develop additive audiences. And it's really very much just, let's just grow women's football. Let's just stop asking questions about, oh, well, we don't do this here. We can't. Can we do this? Can't we do this? We can do what? There's so many things we can do that, and I think a lot of the times what it seems to me is we're looking at the same commercial partners over and over again. We're looking at the same answers over and over again. Let's open the world up a bit. Let's try different things. Let's, bring new things into the table and make people excited.
And finally, I feel like I can't touch on sevens football without touching on sevens rugby, and I guess the impact that the Olympics had on 15s rugby. You know, you saw the Ilona Maher impact, and at Bristol Bears in her first game, I think something like 60% of the audience, this was their first rugby match. Do you feel like, in terms of contributing to 11s football, do you see that as a potential that World Sevens could potentially have that impact on the other way around, if you know what I mean, rather than 11s football impacting sevens and people being interested that way? There's also the opportunity to grow the game.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, I think it'd be relatively arrogant to turn around and say we're going to help grow the 11s game, but I think, everything can help. We can all help each other, and we can all, different experiences, as I said, for different people, and different people are looking for different things. So instead of just having one solution or one thing you can watch loads of different things and see play. There might be one player who, say, in 11-a-side maybe isn't the star, but in 7-a-side is that star. The impact could be massive.